Book of Heaven, Volume 4, Part 18. January 9th, 1903. Everything is written in the hearts of those who believe, hope, and love. This morning I was feeling all oppressed, and since Monsignor had come to visit me, saying that he was not sure that it was Jesus Christ who operated in me, when blessed Jesus came, he told me, "My daughter, in order to comprehend a subject well, it takes belief, because without belief, everything is dark in the human intellect. On the other hand, the mere believing turns on a light in the mind, and by means of this light, one can recognize with clarity truth and falsehood, when it is grace that operates, when it is nature, and when the devil. See, the gospel is known to all, but who comprehends the meaning of my words and the truths contained in it? Who keeps them in his heart and makes of them a treasure with which to purchase the eternal kingdom? The one who believes. As for all others, not only do they not understand a thing, but they use my words to mock them, and to make fun of the holiest things. So it can be said that everything is written in the hearts of those who believe, hope, and love, while nothing is written for everyone else. The same with you. The one who has a little bit of belief sees things with clarity and finds the truth. One who does not sees things as all confused. January 10th, 1903. The most pleasing and consoling words for the sweet mamma. Dominus tecum. This morning, after I struggled very much, the Queen Mother came with the baby in her arms, and she gave him to me, telling me to keep him courted with continuous acts of love. I did as much as I could, and while I was doing this, Jesus told me, "My beloved, the most pleasing and most consoling words for my mother are, Dominus tecum," meaning the Lord is with thee. In fact, as soon as they were pronounced by the archangel, she felt the whole of the divine being communicated to her, and therefore she felt invested with divine power, in such a way that, in the face of the divine power, her own dissolved, and so my mother remained with the divine power in her hands. January 11th, 1903. She sees Monsignor fighting for the sake of religion. As the confessor had told me to pray, according to the intention of Monsignor, finding myself outside of myself, I could see that it did not regard Monsignor, but other people. Among them I could see a very good lady, but all consternated and crying, and Monsignor beneath the arms of a cross, with Christ nailed on it, who defended religion, and would have the occasion to fight for the sake of it. And I saw blessed Jesus saying, "I shall confound them." January 13th, 1903. Luisa sees the Most Holy Trinity. The evil of adulations. As I was in my usual state, I seemed to see the Most Holy Trinity. They were looking at one another, and in those gazes, their beauty was so great that they remained ecstatic at the mere gazing upon one another. In this state, they overflowed with love, and were as though stirred by that love, to then become more intensely ecstatic. So all of their good and delight was comprised within themselves, and the whole of their eternal life, beatitude, and exercise was enclosed in this word alone, love. And the whole beatitude of the saints was formed by this perfect operating of the most holy Trinity. While I was seeing this, the Son assumed the form of the crucified, and coming out from their midst, he came to me, sharing with me the pains of the crucifixion. And while remaining with me, he brought himself once again into their midst, and offered his sufferings and mine, satisfying for the love that all creatures owed them. Who can say their delight, and how satisfied they were by the offering of the Son? It seemed that, since in creating the creatures nothing had come out of their interior but flames constituted by love, so much so that in order to give vent to this love, they began to create many other images of themselves. Only when they receive what they have given are they then satisfied. That is, love they gave, love they want. So the most awful affront is to not love them. Yet, O God, thrice holy, who is there that loves you? After this they disappeared, but who can say what I comprehended? My mind got lost, and my tongue is unable to articulate a word. Then after a little while, blessed Jesus came back with his face covered with spit and with mud. And he said to me, "My daughter, praises, adulations, are spit and mud that dirty and smear the soul, and blind her mind, so as to prevent her from knowing who she really is, especially if they do not start from the truth. In fact, if they start from the truth, and the person is worthy of praises, knowing the truth, she shall give the glory to me. But if they start from falsehood, they drive the soul to such excess that she shall confirm herself more in evil." January 31st, 1903. Effects of the crown of thorns of Jesus. After much struggling, I saw blessed Jesus in my interior for just a little, wearing a crown of thorns. I began to look at him and to compassionate him, and he told me, "My daughter, I wanted to suffer these thorns in my head, not only to expiate all the sins of thought, but to unite the divine intelligence to the human." In fact, the divine intelligence was as though dispersed in the human minds, and my thorns called it from heaven and grafted it once again. Not only this, but for those who were to manifest divine things, I obtained help, strength, and elucidation, so that they might make them known to others. February 1st, 1903. A Protestant church is opened in Corato. The Queen Mother reproaches Luisa. As I was in my usual state, I was feeling very afflicted, especially because my confessor had told me that this morning a Protestant church would be opened in Corato, and that I should pray the Lord to make something happen that would confuse them, at the cost of any suffering of mine. But seeing that the Lord was not coming, and therefore I did not feel great sufferings, the only means to obtain these kinds of graces, I felt a most great affliction. Then after I struggled a lot, blessed Jesus came, and I saw the confessor insisting very much and praying to make me suffer. So it seemed that he shared with me the pains of the cross, and then he told me, My daughter, I have made you suffer, forced by the priestly authority, and I shall permit that those who go there, instead of being convinced by what the Protestants say, shall make fun of them. However, since the chastisement swooped down on Corrado in those days in which I kept you suspended from the state of victim, it must now have its course. And if you continue to suffer, I shall dispose the hearts in such a way that, at the appropriate time, I shall make use of some occasion to have them remain completely confused and destroyed. Then afterwards the Queen Mother came, as if she wanted to use a trait of justice with me. She reproached me bitterly for any thought or word, especially when, seeing myself with very few sufferings, I say that it is no longer will of God, and therefore I want to go out of this state. Who can say with what rigor she reproached me, telling me, "If the Lord permits that you be suspended for a few days, this can be. But the fact that you yourself dispose yourself to do it, this is intolerable before God, as you would almost come to dictate the laws on how he should keep you." I felt the force of rigor so much that I was about to faint, to the point that blessed Jesus, having compassion for me, sustained me in his arms. February 9th, 1903. The goods that the Catholic Church possesses, and what is lacking to the Protestants. This morning, finding myself in my usual state, I saw the confessor with another holy priest, who was saying, "Banish any thought that your position might not be will of God." Then he began to speak about these Protestants of Corrado, whom they talk about. And he said, "They shall do little or nothing, because the Protestants do not have the bait of truth in order to catch the hearts, as does the Catholic Church. They lack the boat of true virtue, to be able to place them in safety. They are without sails, oars, anchor, that are the examples and teachings of Jesus Christ. They reach the point of having neither a bread to satisfy their hunger, nor water to quench their thirst and wash themselves, which are the sacraments. And what's more, they even lack the sea of grace to be able to go in search of souls to be caught. So since all this is lacking, what progress can they possibly make?" And he said many other things that I do not know how to repeat well. After this, my lovable Jesus came and told me, "My daughter, the one who loves me fixes himself before the divine center, but the one who is resigned and does my divine will in everything possesses the center of the divinity within himself." And he disappeared like a flash. A little later he came back. I was thanking him for creation, for redemption, and for so many other benefits. And he added, "In creation I formed the material world, and in redemption I formed the spiritual world." February 22nd, 1903. Sin is poison. Sorrow is the counterpoison. As I was in my usual state, I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little, and he told me, "My daughter, sin offends God and wounds man, and since it was committed by man, and God was offended, in order for him to receive full satisfaction, a man and a God was needed to satisfy for it. The 30 years or so of my mortal life satisfied for the 3 ages of the world, for the 3 different states of law, natural, written, and of grace. and for the 3 different ages of each man, adolescence, youth, and old age. I satisfied, I merited, and impetrated for all, and my humanity serves as the staircase in order to ascend to heaven. But if man does not go up this staircase through the exercise of his own virtues, in vain does he try to ascend, and he shall render my work useless for himself. On hearing sin being mentioned, I said, Lord, tell me a little bit. Why are you so pleased when a soul feels sorrow for having offended you? And he, sin is a poison that poisons the soul completely and renders her so disfigured as to make my image disappear within her. Sorrow destroys this poison and restores my image in her. True sorrow is a counter-poison, and since sorrow destroys the poison, it forms a void in the soul, and this void is filled by my grace. This is why I am pleased. I see the work of my redemption risen again by means of sorrow. February 23, 1903. Men do not want Jesus Christ as their head. The church shall always be church. As I was outside of myself, I found myself near a garden that seemed to be the church. Near it, there seemed to be people plotting an attack against the church and the Pope. And in their midst there was our Lord, crucified, but without a head. Who can say the pity, the horror, to see his most holy body in that state? I comprehended how men do not want Jesus Christ as their head, and since the church represents him on this earth, they try to destroy what stands in his place. Then I found myself in another place. In that I found other people who were asking me, "What do you say about the church?" And I, feeling a light within my mind, said, "The church shall always be church. At the most, she might be washed in her own blood, but this bath shall render her more beautiful and glorious." On hearing this, they said, "This is false. Let us call on our God and see what he says." So a man came out who surpassed everyone in height, with a crown on his head, and he said, "The church shall be destroyed. There shall be no more public services. At the most, some hidden ones. And the Madonna shall no longer be recognized." On hearing this, I said, "And who are you to dare to say this? Aren't you perhaps that serpent condemned by God to crawl on the earth? And now you are so daring as to make yourself believed a king, deceiving the people. I command you to let yourself be known for what you are." While I was saying this, from tall he became very, very short. He assumed the shape of a serpent, and making a flash, he plunged himself down deep. Then I found myself inside myself. March 5th, 1903. The Crosses of the Loss of Illusion. As I was in my usual state, I found myself together with Blessed Jesus, who was carrying a bundle of crosses, hand of thorns in his arms, all tired and weary. On seeing him in that state, I said, "Lord, why weary yourself so much with this bundle in your arms?" And he, My daughter, these are the crosses of the loss of illusion that I keep always ready to disillusion the creatures." Now, as he was saying this, we found ourselves in the midst of people, and as soon as blessed Jesus would see that someone would become attached to creatures, he would take the cross of persecution from that bundle and would give it to him. And that person, seeing himself persecuted, unpopular, would be disillusioned, and would comprehend that those were the creatures, and that God alone deserves to be loved. If someone would become attached to riches, he would take from that bundle the cross of poverty and would give it to him. And that person, seeing that riches had vanished away from him, impoverished, would comprehend that everything down here is smoke, and that true riches are eternal. And so he would attach his heart to everything that is eternal. If someone else would become bound to self-esteem, to knowledge, blessed Jesus, with all sweetness, would take the cross of slanders and of confusions, and would give it to him. And that person, confounded, slandered, would remove as though a mask from himself, and would comprehend his nothingness, his being, and would order his whole interior in the order of God alone, and no longer of himself. And so on with all the other crosses. After this, my adorable Jesus told me, "Have you seen the reason why I hold this bundle of crosses in my arms? It is my love for creatures that forces me to keep it, remaining in continuous attitude for them. In fact, the cross is the primary disillusion, and the first thing that judges the works of creatures, in such a way that if the creature surrenders, the cross shall make him avoid the judgment of God, as I am satisfied when one submits to the judgment of the cross during his life. If then he does not surrender, he shall find himself in the sphere of the second loss of illusion at his death, and shall be judged with much more strict rigor by God. More so, since he has shunned the judgment of the cross, that is a judgment all of love." After this he disappeared, and I also comprehended that it is true that Jesus loves the cross, but many times it is man himself that incites and provokes Jesus to give him the cross. In fact, if man were ordered, in order with God, with himself, and with creatures, not seeing any disorder in him, the Lord would remain at peace, and would give him peace. March 6, 1903. The meaning of the words Ecce Homo. After I had struggled very much, blessed Jesus made himself seen within my interior, telling me, "Shall we go see whether creatures want me?" And I, "Surely they must want you, because you are the most lovable being. Who would have the daring of not wanting you?" And he, "Let us go, and then you shall see what they shall do." So we went, and as we arrived at a place in which there were many people, his head came out from within my interior, and he said those words that Pilate spoke when he showed him to the people. Ecce homo, meaning here is the man. I comprehended that the meaning of those words was to ask them whether they wanted the Lord to reign as their king, and to have dominion in their hearts, minds, and works, And they answered, "Take him away. We do not want him. Or rather crucify him, so that every memory of him may be destroyed." Oh, how many times are these scenes repeated? Then the Lord said to everyone, "Ecce homo." As he said it, a murmuring, a confusion arose. Some were saying, "I do not want him as my king. I want riches." Another, pleasure. Another, honor. Some, dignities. And some, many other things. I listened to those voices with horror, and the Lord told me, "Have you seen how no one wants me? Yet this is nothing. Let us turn to the religious class, and let us see whether they want me." So I found myself in the midst of priests, bishops, religious women, and devout ones. And with sonorous voice, Jesus repeated, "Ecce homo." And they said, "We want him, but we also want our comfort." Others, "We want him, but together with our own interest." Others answered, "We want him, but together with esteem and honor. What is the use for a religious without esteem?" Others replied, "We want him, but together with some satisfaction from creatures. How can one live alone and without anyone that would satisfy us?" Some wanted satisfaction at least in the sacrament of confession, but almost no one wanted him alone. Nor was someone lacking who did not care about Jesus Christ at all. So all afflicted, he told me, "My daughter, let us withdraw. Have you seen how no one wants me? Or at the most they want me together with something that pleases them. I am not content with this, because true reigning is when one reigns alone." As he was saying this, I found myself inside myself. March 9th, 1903. Jesus speaks about humility and about correspondence to grace. Continuing in my usual state, I could hear Blessed Jesus praying in my interior, saying, "Holy Father, glorify your name. Confound the proud, and hide yourself from them, and manifest yourself to the humble, because only the one who is humble recognizes you as his creator and recognizes himself as your creature." Having said this, he no longer let himself be heard, though I comprehended the power of humility before God. It seemed to me that God has no restraint in entrusting the most precious treasures to the humble. On the contrary, everything is open for them. Nothing is under lock and key. All the opposite for the proud. Even more, it seems that he puts a twine around their feet to confound them at each step. Then a little later he made himself seen again and told me, "My daughter, one can know whether a body is alive from its continuous internal heat. It can also be warmed through some external heat, but since this heat does not come from true life, the body quickly cools down again. The same with the soul. It can be known whether she is alive to grace, whether her internal life is alive in operating, in loving me, if she feels the strength of my very life within hers. If then it is because of some external cause that she warms up, does some good, and then cools down again, returning to vices and committing the usual weaknesses, there is great certainty that she is dead to grace, or is at the final extremes of life. In this way one can know whether it is truly I who go to the soul, if she feels my grace in her interior, and all of her good is founded within her interior. If then it is all external, and she perceives nothing good in her interior, it can be the work of the devil. While saying this, he disappeared, but after a little while he came back and added, "My daughter, how terrible it can be for those souls who have been much fecundated by my grace, but have not corresponded to it." The Jewish nation was the favored one, the most fecundated, and yet the most sterile. And the whole of my person could not obtain that fruit that Paul obtained in other nations, less fecundated, but more corresponding. In fact, lack of correspondence to grace blinds the soul. It makes her deceive herself, and disposes her to obstinacy, even in the face of any miracle. March 12, 1903. The sacrifice of Jesus continues in his Eucharistic life, in which he exercises continuous pressure on the Father for the sake of mankind. A soul who is victim with him must also put this continuous pressure on him. As I was in my usual state, I saw myself as all alone and abandoned. Then, after I struggled very much, he made himself seen in my interior, and I said to him, "My sweet life, how is it that you have left me alone? When you put me in this state, everything was union. We arranged everything together, and with sweet force you drew me completely to yourself. Oh, how the scene has changed! Not only have you abandoned me, not only do you not put any pressure on me to keep me in this state, but I myself am forced to put continuous pressure on you, so as not to go out of this position. And this pressing you is a continuous dying for me." And he told me, "My daughter, the same happened when in the consistory of the Sacrosanct Trinity the mystery of the Incarnation was decreed in order to save mankind, and I, united with their will, accepted and offered myself as victim for man. Everything was union among them, and we arranged everything together. But when I set to work, a point came, especially when I found myself in the sphere of pains, of opprobrium, loaded down with all the wicked deeds of creatures, in that I remained alone and abandoned by all, even by my dear Father. Not only this, but loaded down as I was with all pains, I had to press the Omnipotent One to accept and to let me continue my sacrifice for the salvation of the whole of mankind, present and future. And I obtained this, and the sacrifice is still lasting. The pressure is continuous, though it is all a pressure of love. Do you want to know where and how? In the sacrament of the Eucharist. In it, the sacrifice is continuous. Perpetual is the pressure I put on the Father to use mercy upon creatures and on souls in order to obtain their love. And I find myself in a continuous contrast, dying continuously, though all deaths of love. So aren't you happy that I let you participate in the periods of my own life? March 18th, 1903. The one who does the will of God chooses the optimum. This morning, as the confessor asked me whether I felt the desire to suffer, I answered him yes. But I felt more tranquil and enjoyed more peace and contentment when I wanted nothing but what God wants. Therefore, I wanted to remain right there. Then afterwards, when Blessed Jesus came, he told me, "My daughter, you have chosen the optimum, because the one who remains always in my will binds me in such a way as to make a continuous virtue come out of me that keeps her in continuous attitude toward me, so much so that she forms my food and I hers." On the other hand, even if the soul did great, holy, and good things, since it is not virtue that came out of me, it cannot be an enjoyable food for me, because I do not recognize it as a work of my will. Deo gratias. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 4. Fiat.